Do you know which major city is the only one to be founded by a woman? Well, if you read the title of this video and guessed Miami, you're right. Julia Tuttle, a local citrus grower, was the original owner of the land that the city was built on. But since its incorporation in 1896, Miami has grown from being just a small citrus farm to becoming the 7th largest metropolitan area in the country, with a metro population over 6.2 million residents and 478,000 people living in the city limits. It's right here on a map, and while you still may find plenty of citrus fruits growing in the year-round sunshine of the tropical monsoon climate, you're more likely to find the makings of a bustling city. From skyscrapers to nightclubs to the most diverse cultural scene in the region, Miami has it all. I mean, it's one of the cheapest big cities, a major international and financial center, and has warm weather right next to the beach. But while it's a great place to visit due to the gorgeous surrounding nature, deliciously diverse cuisine, and jaw-droppingly beautiful people, it isn't perfect. So before you say goodbye to winters forever and head to the Magic City, these are my top 10 reasons not to move to Miami, Florida. Number 10. If you don't speak Spanish. Miami is one of the most diverse US cities, and a lot of this diversity comes from a variety of Latino people groups, which means most Miamians speak Spanish. In fact, it's many people's preferred language, with 77% of residents speaking Spanish at home. Needless to say, it's gonna be a lot harder to make friends or to gain access to local events and foods if you don't speak the language. Now sure, you don't necessarily need to know Spanish to live here. I mean, technically, you don't even need to know Spanish to live in Spain, but your experience will be extremely limited if you don't at least attempt to learn the language. Number 9. Hot and humid summers. While the dry, sunny winters here with temperatures usually in the 70s are extremely pleasant, summers in Miami are the exact opposite, aka brutally hot. And if you don't pass out from heat exhaustion, you might just drown mid-air from the 100% humidity. It's not like Phoenix or LA where it gets cooler at night either. Most of southern Florida is a flat, humid marshland, which means you have to deal with relentless heat from May to November. Sure, the actual temperature rarely goes above the mid-90s, but I'd much prefer a dry heat of even 120 Fahrenheit in Arizona than 85 with humidity in Miami. It's that bad. And while you might think, oh, I'll just jump in the ocean to cool off, that won't do you much good, as even the ocean water temperature gets into the high 80s during summer. Number 8. Bugs. While most people hate extreme heat and humidity, you know who loves it? Bugs. Now this one kind of goes for most of Florida, but the warm tropical environment is a breeding ground for all sorts of nasty critters. Spray your home, yourself, and the air with bug repellent all you want, but nothing can keep the mosquitoes, spiders, ants, and 10 different species of cockroaches at bay. And since there's no winter here, those mosquitoes are huge and will be sucking your blood year-round. But giant mosquitoes are honestly the least of your concerns, as 2 of the deadliest spiders, the brown recluse and southern black widow, also call South Florida home, and if you so much as leave a plate with a single crumb on it in the sink, ants and palmetto bugs, aka flying cockroaches, will magically appear out of thin air within a few hours. Oh, and aside from bugs, you also gotta worry about alligators, crocodiles, jellyfish, sharks, and over 50 species of snakes. Number 7. Awful drivers and traffic. Speaking of insects, if you're moving here, I hope you've got a cheap car, cause your paint job will get ruined by love bugs. Oh wait, that's the rest of Florida. They're not actually in Miami, thank God. But I still hope you have a cheap car anyways, cause it'll likely get totaled at some point while living here. Yep, I've been to pretty much every major city in this country, and Miami has by far the most obnoxious and worst drivers I have ever seen. Literally nobody uses turn signals, and everyone's always trying to race each other through traffic with no regard for anyone's safety. Basically, multiple car accidents on every main road are inevitable every day, since you've got all the locals who don't obey traffic laws, tourists who don't know the area or how to drive, unending construction and lane closures, and the 9th worst traffic of any US city. It's no wonder Florida has by far the most people run over by cars. Now to be fair, there is a free Metro Rail and Metro Mover that do cover a few neighborhoods, but most parts of the city still have terrible infrastructure and public transportation options despite the endless construction, and Wynwood and Brickell are basically the only real walkable areas. So most people still drive everywhere and are absolute a-holes about it. Number 6. Parking. If you somehow get through all the traffic, construction, and terrible drivers unscathed, I hope you're still at least 20 minutes early because you aren't going to find a parking spot within a few blocks of where you're going. Well, unless you're willing to pay $20 for a parking garage. And if you do somehow find a spot in the city or Miami Beach that seems free, just remember it probably isn't, so make sure you check the signs for zoning laws or a pay station. The towing companies here do not mess around.
So what if parking's expensive and impossible to find? I'll just live downtown so I get a free parking spot.
Well, you'll most likely still have to pay an extra $200 a month to park in a garage that's a 10-minute walk away from where you actually live. And if you're planning on buying a house so that you can park there, make sure it has a driveway because way too many homes here don't. Most people just use Uber and Lyft to get around. So I guess the real question is, where do the Uber drivers park their cars? Number 5. The people. There are really only a few types of people in Miami. The party animals, self-proclaimed entrepreneurs, retirees, suburban families, and the tourists. And whether they're spring breakers, cruise ship goers, or entitled newbies who think they're way cooler than they actually are, most tourists here have one thing in common. They're obnoxious narcissists. You'd think being on vacation would make people nicer, but everyone seems to think Miami's their personal party zone and is just plain rude, especially in March when thousands of college students destroy the beaches and make traffic even worse. But it's not just the tourists. Many Miami residents are obnoxious narcissists too. If you couldn't tell based on how they drive, just take a walk around or talk to someone and you'll see how stuck up, entitled, and self-centered most of the people here are. Which is weird because there's also this thing called Miami time where being on time is considered early and most people are super laid back about doing things on a schedule. Like, it makes sense that New Yorkers are standoffish since they're seriously in a rush and don't have time to stop and talk. But Miamians are rarely in a hurry as they almost always show up late anyways, so they don't even have an excuse for being rude. Number 4. It's not a good place for kids. Sure, Miami does have family-friendly activities, including tons of parks, museums, and beautiful beaches, but this is still very much a party city at heart. And that party culture features lots of binge drinking, drug use, objectifying women, sexualized advertisements, plastic surgery ads everywhere, and a huge club scene. Now, this can be great if you're in your 20s or just visiting, but if you're looking for a serious relationship or you're a family with kids, Miami is not the place for you. Education isn't exactly a priority either, as the public schooling system just isn't good. But maybe that's because more emphasis is put on looks and appearances here than actually learning and pursuing your goals. Add in a major crime problem in many neighborhoods, and it's safe to say Miami is not a great place for kids. Number 3. Flex culture. Miami is a green city, and I'm not talking about the environment, although they probably should be one of those too. More on that later. But yes, in Miami, it's all about the Benjamins. As long as you have money, you're accepted into the crowd. And because of this, even people without money are obsessed with acting like they have tons of it, which leads to terrible financial decisions, such as spending their last few bucks just to be able to look rich with fancy clothes, watches, and cars, rather than actually saving and investing their money to become rich. Maybe Miamians are just trying to make up for their fake personalities with real Gucci, because like I said earlier, this is a city full of superficial narcissists. Most men you meet will only talk about themselves or how much money they make, and since there's a ton of pressure on women to base their value on their appearance, many elect to get plastic surgery since it's the only way to keep up with the unrealistic beauty standards. And considering how expensive most plastic surgery is, it's no wonder that so many women here are gold diggers, which only makes it harder to find a serious relationship. But let's be honest, no one in Miami's really looking for one anyways. Number 2, low wages and a high cost of living. Even if the people here didn't blow their paychecks on luxury fashion and lip injections, many would probably still be struggling to get by. While Miami is cheaper than most big cities in this country, it's still really expensive compared to the rest of Florida, with a median home value of $397,000. And wages are much lower than they would be for the same job in other cities. The median household income is barely over 60 grand, which is the second lowest among the top 25 largest metropolitan areas. And rents are extremely high due to a lack of rent control, which has resulted in a poverty rate of 23.4%. Most things in general, from food to clothes to alcohol, are more expensive too, but that's just the cost to live in paradise. Right? Now, before we get to number 1, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and let me know which city you want me to cover next. But without further ado, number 1, it will soon cease to exist. While everything on this list may suck, all of Miami's problems may soon disappear, along with the rest of the city. Due to rising ocean levels, it's estimated that $23 billion worth of property could be submerged as soon as 2050, with sea levels rising another 5 to 6 feet by 2100. And since Miami's average elevation is only 6 feet above sea level, much of the city will no longer exist. That is, if the hurricanes and floods don't wipe it out first. You can expect them to cause a multi-day power outage at least once every couple years. But now it doesn't even take a storm to flood parts of the city, as king tide season, where the tides under a full or new moon can become so elevated that the ocean water filters through drains flooding the streets, lasts from late fall to early winter, and really stinks. No, like, it literally stinks because the seawater mixes with sewage. Now, I honestly really love Miami, and I'm seriously considering moving here, as it's the perfect blend of the Caribbean and United States. Sure, it's not perfect, but there really is nowhere else in this country with year-round warm weather, beautiful beaches, and true big city amenities.